Hello, and thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my trusty sidekick, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. Of course, it's at Eric Dalala.
Phil, is this the part where we take over the world?
Yes, it is. This is where we.
That's my favorite
scheme.
part.
That's pretty much what we try to do every night, Eric. So,
exactly.
Yeah. We have got a great show in store for Neutral Zone Nation today. We'll talk about what a win would mean against the Kansas City Chiefs. What would that mean, Eric? Do we
beating them?
A win against them? Yeah.
That's allowed?
Do we do that?
Does anybody do that?
Not really. Only the Raiders in the last calendar year. So.
Ugh.
Yeah. We'll talk about what we want to see in the next 5 games. Eric, one of the things that I tend to do is I flash back years and I'm like, okay, after Thanksgiving, how was this team this year? Or how was it in 2018, 2019? That's something that I like to do, Eric. We'll talk about where this team is now and what they want to see in the next 5 games. I don't know if you remember, though, Eric, last year, that's when Drew Lock started his little 5-game 4-1 to finish up a little streak there.
I do remember that. And then it just spurred a whole offseason of excitement.
Exactly. So could that happen again, Eric?
Well, he's already played his first 5 games, so.
I'm saying, could there be a stretch here in any way where the Broncos do something in these next 5 games where heading into the offseason, you feel a lot of excitement?
Definitely.
We'll dive into that. And we'll also hear from our old friend, Brock Osweiler. We caught up with him, and I'll just say this right now, Eric. I think that this is a conversation that NZ Nation is going to really enjoy. We talk about the glory times, that 2015 season, that stretch there. I asked them, hey, do the Broncos win that Super Bowl without you? We got into all kinds of different things, Eric. I asked him if he regretted any decisions that he made. I got into what he's been up to now. He just started a podcast, the Brock and Roll Show. He started his own podcast, a big rival to the Neutral Zone. But
I'm a little confused because I've seen you described as a toady and a PR mouth for the team. Asking those tough questions doesn't really fit in with that.
I still haven't figured out what toady means. There's been some banter on YouTube. Have not figured out what it means.
I'll tell you when you're older.
Thank you. Yeah, please. It might not be for all. It's not suitable for all audiences. No, so we gotta be careful about that. Yeah. So right. Yeah, we got into a lot of different things. Talked about an interesting moment after he was benched in that game against the Chargers when Manning came in and the stadium erupted and there was so much excitement that Manning was coming back into the game. Of course, the number 1 seed and home field advantage in the AFC was on the line. And that was a difficult moment for Brock. And he shared some details about what Gary Kubiak did for him after that game. That I just think that it's going to be a good conversation. You might want to just skip ahead straight to it right now.
It's like one of those ads you get that's like, you'll never guess what Gary Kubiak did after the Broncos win over the Chargers.
Exactly. It's exactly like that. Then they found out why they were all laughing.
Exactly.
Yeah. What caused this giant hole in the earth? You'll never believe it. It's all part of our Broncos Legends series. So there's plenty more content
that series
from this interview that you can find on denverbroncos.com, Broncos social channels, and also right here on YouTube as well. So make sure you check that stuff out.
And your professional Instagram page, I think, too, right?
No, well, some things go there. Yeah. I don't even. I think
are fans allowed to follow that? Or
Phil Milani Broncos, yeah, on Instagram. Yeah.
It's a good follow. I'll just say that.
Hey, I'm a man of the people, Eric. So I got to
give
people what they want. Sort of like a brand. sort of an institution, I think that somebody said
yes,
in the last podcast.
They did say that.
Yeah. So
for some reason.
Yeah. And then we'll get into our usual shenanigans. We'll talk fact, or fiction, and also fill in the blank. So how does that sound, Eric?
I love it.
If fans want to be a part of the show, they could leave a voicemail, 707-NEUTRAL. You could leave a voicemail and we'll play it right here on the air. We like to do that on Mondays, Eric. So after the game, give us a call. Let us know what you think. You could also write us an email and we'll read that right on the air.
That's right. neutralzoneshow@gmail.com.
You could also hit us up on Twitter at Eric Dalala with an A, at Phil Milani with a PH. Very strange spellings.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. So that is how you can get in touch with us. You can also leave a comment on YouTube. We read all of those. It makes me laugh. It makes Eric cry. So, sweet and salt.
It's fair.
It's a good combination. You like that. You could also rate and review, subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. So all the different ways you can get in touch with the Neutral Zone. And with that, Eric, let's dive right into our first topic of conversation, and that's what would a win against the Kansas City Chiefs mean this Sunday on Sunday Night Football?
A lot, I think. And I know it would obviously mean more if you were 7-4 at this time and had a chance to win the division or a realistic chance at the wild card. But I still think, Phil, I talked before this season. You said the Broncos have to find a way to beat the Chiefs. They're building to beat the Chiefs. They've added speed to beat the Chiefs. And I told you again and again, it's only 2 games. You don't have to beat the Chiefs. There are plenty of ways to get to the playoffs without beating the Chiefs. I will say now that while I still believe that, I do think that there's a sense of if you can somehow upset Kansas City, it gives this team a little bit of an ego boost, or maybe a confidence builder that, hey, we can hang against these guys. And the longer this streak goes on, I think it just becomes more and more difficult for this team to believe that, they're only a few games away or a year away from competing for a title. And so even if you end up 6-10 on the season, if you can do that with a win over the Chiefs and convince yourselves that, hey, we can beat these guys when we're playing well, that would mean a great deal going into next year, I think.
Eric, I'll just say this. When I see that the next game is against the Chiefs, at this point, I'm just sort of chalking that up as a loss. I mean, it's just gotten to that point where, and I hate
especially
to say
on the road.
I mean, I hate to say this, road or at home. It really doesn't matter these days. I mean, so that just gives you an idea of what a win would actually mean. That would, in my opinion, it's almost like a college team that knocks off their big rival, and they're like, "Hey, we didn't have the greatest season, but at least that Thanksgiving game we beat our rivals." Almost like if like Michigan were to beat Ohio State, something crazy like that. If that were to actually happen, then it kind of washes out. It kind of washes out some of the bad taste of maybe some of the things that had happened before this season. Hey, this has been an up and down season, but at least we beat these guys. That's how the kind of feeling I'm getting now, because, you think about all these games and all the different ways the Broncos have lost, and you just think, gosh, it almost feels impossible to go into Arrowhead and win that game. Of course, it's not, but the Broncos have not proven anything over the last couple of weeks that suggests that they're going to be able to go in there and do this.
Right. And I mean, the odds makers certainly feel that way. I think the line was at 13.5 when I saw it last. It's not pretty. Phil, I'll say 2 things here. One, the only reason I disagree a little bit there, that no matter what happens, if you beat your rivals, you feel better. I think if this were a veteran team, maybe it doesn't matter as much, but because this is such a young team that hasn't tasted success, if they can do that, it spurs you forward for the future a little bit, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that's what I'm saying is like it would, I agree with you. It would give confidence and it would wash some of that bad taste out.
And then the other thing that's interesting to me, Phil, and I do actually, if you look back at the week 7 game, even though it was 43-16, I do think they did some things better. They moved the ball for the first time really in the last year and a half, because they didn't do that in either game in 2019. The defense held Mahomes to 200 yards, which is the lowest total he's had. And I know Vic Fangio said on Wednesday some of that was the game, the way it played out, but it really wasn't in the first half. I mean, they forced a couple 3-and-outs. They sacked him 3 times. They forced a couple punts. They got a turnover. I do think that defensive performance was impressive. And I bring that up because, Phil, over the course of these 11 games, particularly the last 3 and the ones in Arrowhead, when the Chiefs play the Chargers and the Raiders, those are close games. And when the Broncos play the Chargers and the Raiders, except for this year in Las Vegas, those are generally close games. For whatever reason, the Broncos have not been close even against the Chiefs. And I don't know what it is, if the Chargers or Raiders play a style that's more conducive to being close with the Chiefs. But Phil, we've had 3 consecutive blowouts now, and a couple other in Arrowhead over this stretch, where to me it's like the Raiders are close to knocking off the Chiefs. It feels like the Chargers have played the Chiefs close, and you think, well, can Denver just keep it close and make it a game? To me, even that is progress from what we've seen the last 3 matchups.
Yeah. And, the Broncos were asked about this on Wednesday. Hey, what do you think the biggest single factor is going to be in determining this game, or going to give the Broncos a chance? And they said not turning the football over, Eric. They said that was a big time turning point in that first matchup this year, when Drew threw that pick 6, when they tried to do that flea flicker and it didn't work. I think that if the Broncos are able to protect the football, secure the football, they're going to give themselves a good opportunity to be in this game. And Eric, before we started recording, we were looking it up. The last time the Broncos won the turnover battle against the Chiefs was that week 2 game against them in Arrowhead in 2015. I was going to say, it almost feels like that Roby touchdown when Brandon Marshall knocked the ball out of Jamal Charles's hands. It almost feels like that cursed the Broncos against the Chiefs. It's like, we'll give you this win, but you're going to lose the next 10 or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you need that win to get home field advantage and win a Super Bowl. So maybe it's worth it. But I do think when I was listening to the guys talk about that on Wednesday, I thought to myself, the Broncos have to be perfect when they play. They can't turn the ball over and expect to win. And then I thought, well, Mahomes can throw 2 picks and he's still going to win. But like you just mentioned, Phil, if you look at the actual history of the matchup, the Chiefs win because they don't turn the ball over. And so that's not to say that the Broncos could win the turnover battle and still lose, because I think that's possible, just the way that Patrick Mahomes plays and how no lead is safe. But the Broncos haven't even given themselves that chance. So let's at least see what happens if you can protect the football. Because if you look back at week 7, Phil, what kept the Broncos in the game at first was the fact that the Chiefs fumbled at their own 37-yard line, and the Broncos scored a touchdown to essentially even things up. So you can see what kind of impact that has.
And even during this streak here of losses against the Chiefs, some of the games, the Broncos have turned the ball over 5 times. I mean, they've been kind of extremes. And I'll say this, it does feel like sometimes the Chiefs force you into doing some of these things where either they get a lead or you feel the pressure to keep up with them offensively. So maybe the quarterback takes some shots that maybe they normally wouldn't take. It seems like the Chiefs do force opposing teams into not playing a comfortable style of football, and they force them into these mistakes.
Yeah, and I think you feel like, they score a touchdown, a 3-and-out's as bad as a turnover. And so, I've got to force it here on 3rd and 8 so that we can stay on the field and we can score points. And that's what they do because they're so good on offense. And then, they're not the number 1 defense in the league, but they are opportunistic. Tyrann Mathieu makes plays when he needs to. Frank Clark has made plays. They have guys that can do that when necessary. It's going to be another tough game, Phil, but if they can win, it would be massive.
The other nice thing to note is that it's not expected to be blizzarding on Sunday night against the Chiefs. The last 2 games against Kansas City sort of feel like anomalies, or like just sort of different kind of football games, just because the weather did play a massive role in each of those last 2 games. So hopefully maybe some solid footing that'll help just sort of normalize the game and make it a fair match and just see what happens. So, Eric, with that, let's get into our next topic here, and that is what could the next 5 games mean for this team? Last year, that's when Drew Lock came in and they went on to win 4 out of their last 5. Made everything sort of feel better heading into the offseason. Is it possible that they could do something in these next 5 games that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy like we did last year?
Yeah, if Drew Lock plays well. I mean, I don't even think it matters what the record is. He just needs to start playing a little bit better and show what he's capable of, show a little bit of progression. I thought we saw that to some degree against the Dolphins, and then just like that, he's out again against the Saints. And kind of the way that EJ Boye's had a hard time of like getting some momentum going, Drew has had the same issue here because he's been in and out of the lineup. I mean, these 5 games, it's not as much as you would like, but I think they're still extremely important in the evaluation of him. Maybe somewhat in his development, but definitely in the evaluation in terms of deciding, is he the guy next year? Do we bring, or is he the unquestioned guy? Do we bring in a veteran via trade or free agency that kind of competes with him in training camp, or is just kind of there just in case things don't go well? Do you say you go 1-4 or 2-3 or 0-5 and you end up with somewhere between 10 and 15? Do you package a draft pick to move up and try to get a guy like Justin Fields if he falls, the BYU quarterback, Zach Wilson, I believe his name is? It's starting to get to the point where, Phil, where I feel like we should brush up on these quarterback names.
Really? See, I'm not there yet, but if you want to be, hey, okay.
Some people are saying we should be.
Sound the alarms.
I mean, I personally think as long as he doesn't revert to Oakland form and plays about the same as he did against the Dolphins the rest of the year, I'm okay giving him another year. I'd probably like a little bit better backup situation, so that if things go south at the beginning of next year and you're 0-2 or whatever, you don't have to waste another whole season to compete. But no, I mean, I think one way or another, you're going to know over the next 5 games, you're either going to feel much better about Drew, or you're going to go into the offseason with kind of the same anxiety that you had in 2016, in 2017, kind of in 2018, and kind of in 2019. And so it's a friend of ours, Phil, this uncertain feeling about the quarterback position in the offseason.
Before we came into this season, we said it, that this whole year was going to be about Drew Lock. If he played well, this was going to be a good team. If he didn't play well, this wasn't going to be a good team. And I think we've just seen a combination of both of those things. At times playing very well, and the Broncos look good. Like, take away those last couple of interceptions against the Patriots, this team looked good. The way they played against the Titans in that first game, if they were able to score a couple of touchdowns there, this team looks good. If they, don't turn the ball over against the Dolphins, this team looks good, like legit good. And other times, like against the Raiders, when Drew doesn't play well, or against the Falcons doesn't play well, then this team doesn't look good. And so we kind of had that feeling coming into the season. And as for the next 5 games, I do think that a lot will be determined here. I'm not saying that his whole future depends on these next 5 games, because I do think that the general consensus in the building is that experience and reps and everything is going to help Drew get better and better and better. And in general, I feel like consistency is the number one thing right now, which is why you hate to see Drew miss the game against the Saints, because you just want to see him play and have some a level line here where it doesn't feel like it's going up and down like this. So I do think that if he played well and they won a few of these games and maybe they upset a really good team, I would feel okay. And, right now they have 7 losses, Eric. If they could somehow get to 8-8, I would feel pretty good. I would say, hey, that wasn't a losing season. That was, a good, strong finish. And in general, just a strange year, everything going on with coronavirus, no off season. We've talked about this a million times. If you could just chalk it up to, hey, this was a sort of a weird year, but we did finish strong and they finished 8-8 or whatever, then I would feel pretty comfortable heading in the off season, where I would say, hey, in the draft, they could address some other areas of need. They could address some other areas in free agency. But, if it doesn't go well, then you're opening yourself up to, hey, maybe we bring in a free agent. Maybe, I don't know if the draft is an option there for him, but I could see them bringing in a free agent to at least apply some pressure.
Yeah. So, and, truly, I think 8-8 at this point would require a Herculean effort just to go 4-1, because you do, like we've mentioned, this Chiefs game, a really tough ask. And then you play the Bills, you play the Raiders. You've got to go on from Sunday Night Football to the East Coast to play the Panthers in what's an 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff. We see every year that hurts kind of these West Coast teams and Mountain Time teams. So, we'll see. I would think a 6-10, 7-9 is probably much more likely. But yeah, if they could get to 8-8, I think you'd be thrilled. But Phil, I'd rather go 0-5 and see Drew Lock start playing much better in a way that is not like garbage time stats, but just like, hey, he's playing well. You just happen to lose for whatever reason. I'd rather that happen than, win 4 of these and go 8-8. But you're winning despite him.
Yeah. And when I listen to Drew Lock talk, when he's in these press conferences, I feel the competitiveness inside of him. And he just wants so badly to put these critics at bay. He wants to go out there and play like he knows he's capable of playing. You can almost just feel it coming through the Zoom. Kind of like the energy you and I have on these.
Right.
I can feel that from him, where he just so badly, like it almost feels like, in anger management, where they say, you got to let it out. Otherwise, you're just going to explode one day. I kind of get that feeling sometimes from Drew, where I'm like, gosh, one of these days he's going to go out there and have a game where he just throws like 4 or 5 touchdowns and explodes. And hopefully that's this Sunday.
Well, and the talent's there because, every evaluation said he's got the same talent that a Justin Herbert does. And it's just that Justin Herbert's been able to put it together a little bit better so far, but I don't doubt that Drew has that ability.
Oh, of course. Of course. Eric, let's get to fact, or fiction. Do we want to call this fact, or fiction, or fact, and fiction? I don't know.
I think fact, and fiction makes more sense.
Yeah, because it's all 3.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's get this thing started here, Eric. Number 1, the Broncos are back on Sunday Night Football for the first time since 2017. Overall, they're 26-20 all time, but over their last 6 matchups on Sunday Night Football, they've gone 3-3.
Okay.
Number 2, Kareem Jackson played with Chiefs safety Tyrann Mathieu in Houston in 2018. And according to Jackson, that's when he got the nickname Jack Boy from Tyrann Mathieu. He said Tyrann Mathieu called him Jack Boy, and that's when he started doing the flexing. Okay, that's number 2 here. And then Eric, number 3, Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bienemy was an All-American running back at CU and still holds the school's all-time record in rushing yards and touchdowns. Eric, in fact, he's ahead of, in number 2 in CU's all-time rushing yards, Philip Lindsay, number 2. Bienemy, 165 more rushing yards.
Wow, Philip Lindsay should be ashamed of himself, huh?
Bienemy in 1990, of course, the Buffs won the national championship that year. Bienemy that season finished 3rd in the Heisman Trophy voting.
Wow.
That one's true. I'll go ahead and give you that one. That one's true.
Let's go Buffs. I'm guessing the Jack Boy didn't come from the weekly release. If you probably read a little story to get that one. So I'm impressed with you branching out a little bit.
I don't really go to the weekly release as much as I used to.
The Sunday Night Football one is interesting. I think you said 3-3 in their last 6. I'm trying to remember some of those games. And it's, I think one of them was against the Raiders in 2016 that they lost. I think they played the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football that year and lost. So that'd be 0-2. I'm trying to think if I can think of a couple other losses here. I know they beat the Packers on Sunday Night Football 2015 and 1. I'm just going to say that one's false. I bet the record's not 3-3.
That's you got that one right, Eric. Yes. The Broncos are 26-20 all time on Sunday Night Football, but they have lost 5 consecutive matchups with Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth. It's
which are they? Do you have them in front of you or no?
I do. Yeah. The last game was in 2017. They lost to the Patriots. Earlier that season, I don't know if you remember this game, but they lost to the Giants. That was a game that they were supposed to win. Trevor Siemian picked 6 in that game.
Don't do that to Trevor. I thought about that one. I thought that was a Monday Night Football game, but I must be remembering incorrectly.
The year before that, technically that Christmas night game in Kansas City was Sunday Night Football.
That was a bad night, dark time.
Yes. And also in 2016 was that overtime thriller against the Chiefs that they lost that game. That's the one where Benny Fowler ran all the way in for the score. And then you mentioned that in 2016 that lost to the Raiders. I believe that was the first Sunday Night Football game ever at the Oakland Coliseum.
And that was kind of the changing of the guard, Phil. The Raiders haven't really kept it up. I know they made the playoffs that season, but that year the Raiders were really good and the Broncos were kind of trying to hold on. And it was really at that point, that game, where you were kind of like, maybe the Broncos aren't Super Bowl contenders anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say the 5 games before that on Sunday Night Football, they won all of them. So technically they're 5-5 in their last 10.
Did they have Peyton Manning for those 5?
And Brock Osweiler. You like that?
Tease there.
You like that, Eric?
You know what you're doing.
With that, let's get to my conversation with Brock Osweiler. This is part of the Broncos Legends series that we do. Make sure you check that out. You can find out all about Brock's new podcast, Brock and Roll. He does a lot of stuff with covering Arizona State, his alma mater. We talked about that on the Broncos Legends series, but for the neutral zone, we're going to stick to him talking about his football career. And I started out by asking, hey, when you think back to it, what kind of quarterback would you say you were?
If I could walk away from my playing days and any teammate that I ever played with, if you went up to them and asked them a question about me, as long as they said that Brock was a damn good teammate and he cared about his team and he worked hard, that's what I cared about. I wanted to be a good teammate. I wanted to have no regrets when it came to working hard and leaving it all on the field. And it's tough for me to describe myself, but it just meant a lot to me to try to be the best teammate possible and to just try to work as hard as I could and be tough. I think that's one thing. I have a lot of appreciation for the players that, they don't miss games. They're hurting, they're beat up, but they're tough and they're out there on the field for their team and their teammates and their coaches and their organization. And so that was what I cared about. I wanted to be a tough player, a hardworking player, and a great teammate. So if you ask anybody, if they said I hit some of those boxes, that'd put a smile on my face.
I'm sure that they would say that, Brock. Of course, I remember that game in Pittsburgh in that 2015 season. You took a shot to your shoulder there, came back and gutted out a second half.
Snap, Osweiler, flushed, runs. He's at the 5. Osweiler into the end zone, touchdown Denver.
What I used to say, it's like, listen, if I can walk, I'm going to be on that field. And I just, the quarterbacks that play the game that way, I just have a ton of respect for them.
Of course, talking about that 2015 season, what a magical run. What do you remember from that season, starting in Chicago and then even that snow game against the Patriots?
Wow, what a year. It would take me an hour to summarize 2015. I would just say this. It's a year that I just have so much love and appreciation for. And it's a year that formed relationships that are going to last a lifetime. The respect I have for my teammates and that coaching staff and what everyone did that year to just get the job done, and how we did it as a team. I just love everybody that was involved with the Denver Broncos in that year, and I always will.
Brock, would you say it's fair to say the Broncos don't win that Super Bowl without you?
Well, listen, I'm not going to say that. My biggest thing, you know, is 2015. It was done and accomplished as a team. Mm-hmm. You know, end of story. I don't think if you shake up that roster, if you take, you know, anyone off that roster, you know, we might not go win a Super Bowl. You know, it took everyone that was on that team and on that coaching staff to do it together. And I'm just grateful that, you know, when the team needed me to go out there and do my job, I was able to do it, you know, because it's the worst feeling in the world as a competitor, as a guy who cares about being a great teammate. It's the worst feeling in the world to let your teammates down. And so the fact that I was ready when my opportunity came knocking on the door and I made the most of it, that's what I'm grateful for. But by no means did anything happen in 2015 just because of myself. That was a true team deal.
I know that you're a competitor. You wanted to be out there when they made that move to Peyton after the last regular season game there. Gary Kubiak said you came into his office after the game and maybe there were some beers that were consumed. What was that moment like for you, Brock? And maybe did it change some things for you that now you even apply to your life today?
Yeah, you know what, Coach Kubiak. He knows how much I love and appreciate him. You know, I still make a point to try to call him every couple months and just check in. And he is just the best man on the planet. You know, every time I call Coach, before he asks about me or I ask about him or whatever, he always just says, "Hey, how's your girls? How's your family?" And I think that just says so much about Gary and who he is. But you're right. After that Week 17 San Diego game, you know, I was obviously upset about being benched, and you know, it was just so hard to go to the sidelines after, you know, what we had been doing that second half of the season. And to his credit, and this is why he's so special, and I would jump in front of a bullet in a second for him. You know, he came to my locker, he put his arm around me, and he said, "Hey, come talk to me." And he pulled me back into his office that's in the stadium. And I can't quite remember, but we sat down and he just told me that he loved me and he cared about me, and he just kind of talked me through the moment. And obviously I was very emotional. I mean, I was breaking down. It was just it was like my life had just been taken from me. And he got me to a point where, you know, I was good. I was feeling better about things, and he just said, "Listen, dude, I have to get out there. I have to go do my press conference right now." But he says, "Right there's the remote to the TV." And he said, "In that mini fridge right there," he goes, "there's an unlimited amount of Bud Lights." He said, "You stay in here as long as you want until you feel good and want to head back out to the locker room." So I did. I turned on whatever game was on, and I think I slammed about 6 Bud Lights in 5 minutes. And then I went and talked to you guys and the rest of the media. So, but my point is, there's so many coaches out there that bench quarterbacks every week, right? And they don't go at the end of the game with all the things that those coaches have to do, media, injuries, this, that, the other. Not many of them that go up to that guy, put their arm around him and say, "Hey, come with me." And he didn't have to do that, but he did. Something that a lot of people don't know is later that night at about 10 p.m., he texted me and he goes, "Hey, dude, how you doing? Are you doing okay? Do you want to talk?" Once again, not many coaches, if any, would truly care that much about the situation. Gary did. Just very grateful that I got that year with him.
After that, you obviously had to deal with the contract situation and everything like that moving forward. You think maybe you would make a different call nowadays, knowing what everything that happened?
As far as the decision goes, firm believer, everything in life happens for a reason. And I wouldn't go back on that. What I would say, though, is I wanted to be a lifelong Bronco. I really did. I love everything about that city, the organization, the people inside of it. But there is a business side to this sport, and tough decisions have to be made. And that goes for the players and the organization. Tough decisions on both sides. And unfortunately, we weren't able to come to an agreement. I will say this, though, I was being advised, like most young players, by their agents and other people of influence that help make those decisions for you. And one of the pieces of advice I got was, when you get to a certain, time frame from free agency opening, let's just keep all conversations between front offices and my agents and just kind of keep me out of it. John did reach out to me a couple days before free agency opened directly on my cell. And, if there was one thing, when you ask, like, do you regret anything? Would you have made a different decision? The one decision that I wish I would have done was pick up the phone when John called. Out of respect to him and just our relationship and just everything there. If I could go back now, I don't know if that would have changed anything as far as making the decision to go to Denver or Houston, but I wish I would have at least picked up the phone and heard directly from John, whatever he wanted to say, rather than getting it from, my agents and other people in that circle. I wish I would have picked up that phone call just to see what he had to say. I still remember exactly where I was sitting when the phone rang. I remember the whole night. I remember everything. But that's life, and I don't dwell in the past. I don't look in the rearview mirror. That's not how I operate. But what I do try to do is learn from situations that I wish I would have done something different in, and that's one of them.
I think that's the only way you can look at it. Hey, just keep moving forward, and it is what it is. And luckily, we got to reconnect a couple of years down the road and have you back in Denver.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that was so cool. So, there's another John phone call. I remember when our plane landed, my wife and I, and at the time it was just our one daughter, and we got back into Denver and the plane touched down and we were in the car, and I was looking around at the city again, and you see the mountains, and I remember looking at my wife and I just said, we're home. And it felt so good. It was one of the happiest days of my life, after the 1 year I had in Houston. To be able to go back to the place that I wanted to spend my entire career, that I had so much love and appreciation for. It really was. It was a top 5 day of my life to go back to Denver. Now, unfortunately, the 2017 season wasn't a very successful one, and it was a tough year for the entire team. But regardless, just to be able to go back and see all those familiar faces in the facility and the equipment room and training room, and it was just, boy, I tell you what, that was a special deal.
I just have one last one here for you, Brock. Do you still try and keep in touch with Peyton at all after spending so many years together?
A little bit. I'm waiting for Peyton to call me and say, hey, dude, meet me at Augusta. Let's go play some golf. I'm waiting for that phone call. But outside of the phone call to go play Augusta, we do keep in touch a little bit. I got to say, from the time I arrived in Denver, he's been nothing but just incredible to me. Even now, when I was trying to get a job, playing football, whether it be last season or even this season. This season I tried getting back on a roster, and unfortunately there were no job offers. he called GMs for me on my behalf. He called head coaches for me on my behalf. And, you know, that's just one example of the man he is and our relationship. But we keep in touch, you know, we make sure everyone's kids are doing well. And, but like I said, just, he's been awesome to me. Nothing but love and appreciation towards Peyton and Ashley and the whole family. But if he does want to call me next time he's headed to Augusta, he has my number. So I'm just waiting for it to ring at the right time.
Hopefully he sees this and he'll know. What do you think is next for you, Brock? Maybe coaching then, if it's not media?
You know, I would love to coach. I really would. I think this is the greatest game on the planet. I love it so much. I have such a passion for it. You know, I have so much respect for coaches because if you're going to coach in the NFL, you know you're going to sacrifice a ton of time away from your family. And to be honest with you, Phil, I just don't know if I'm willing and ready to do that. I love my girls so much, and it's so fun spending that time with them. So right now, I'm trying to find an avenue that allows me to be involved with football, but also have still a balanced family life. So, you know, I'm getting closer to, I think, finding that answer. There's a couple things out there that I want to try to pursue and lock in, and you know, hopefully by the time next football season rolls around, I will have found something.
I was going to say, you could call CJ Anderson and see how it's going. Hey, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it chatting up. Really, that was a great conversation. I really enjoyed that.
No, that was great. Thanks so much for having me, and give everyone my best there at Dove Valley.
My thanks to Brock Osweiler for spending some time chatting there. Audio quality not 100% on that, so I hope that you listen to that. He was recording that in his car, so appreciate.
You're gonna blame it on Brock.
Well, his internet connection was not great, but I do appreciate it.
So Brock took the time to chat with you, and you're just gonna throw him under the bus.
That's not throwing under the bus. I said I hope that everybody listened to that, because we got into a lot of really good things there, Eric, talking about his relationship with Gary Kubiak. The two of them still very close. They chat maybe once a month, just checking in to see how he's doing. Talked about his relationship with Peyton Manning there. Peyton making some phone calls for Brock, trying to see if he could have got back in the league the last couple of years. But it does sound like Brock is now ready to move on with his life and get into a post-retirement, something coming up next year for Brock. We'll have to see if that's coaching or if that's broadcasting. What he wasn't quite sure, but he wants to spend some time with his family. So, but with that, Eric, it made me wonder that 2016 season, if Brock had decided to come back, we knew what that defense was all about. They didn't really lose a lot from that Super Bowl championship team. If Brock would have come back, how good do you think that Broncos team would have been in 2016? Are you talking about potentially repeat champions?
Sure. I mean, I think just because I think that Brock probably gets you one more win that season. That the team went 9-7. And just to refresh people's memories, they started off 6-2 and then really struggled down the stretch, going 3-4. Trevor Siemian was dealing with an injury and Paxton had to play a little bit more. But I think if you look at that schedule, they lost a Thursday night football game at San Diego that Gary Kubiak did not coach at. And an injured Trevor Siemian played. They lost that game. They lost a 13-10 game in Tennessee. I think if you win either two of those, you definitely end up in the playoffs. And then who knows what happens once you're in the playoffs. I just think that Brock's experience in that system, maybe he still feels a little bit more pressure because he's now the guy. For whatever reason, it didn't work in Houston, Phil. And I think just him staying in the same system would have helped. Do I think he would have played at a Manning level? No, but he could have been good enough. And maybe the underrated aspect here, Phil, is if Brock stays, you don't spend your first round pick on Paxton Lynch. And so you're able to add probably another quality starter to that lineup. And whether that's somebody to replace Malik Jackson, if that's somebody to replace Danny Trevathan, if that was somebody, obviously the offensive line was kind of an issue that year, maybe you add somebody there. I just think you would have had the opportunity to add another dynamic player. And then if Brock was even just kind of the same serviceable type guy he was when he filled in for Peyton, I do think they would have made the playoffs. And then you never know what happens at that point.
Oh, I mean, I guess they did lose Malik Jackson. I did forget about that. I knew Danny Trevathan, but felt like maybe, Todd Davis stepped up there and was pretty serviceable there at that time. But yeah,
but that Atlanta game, Phil, the linebackers cost you.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm just saying, regardless of what position,
not quite the same. Yeah, not quite the same.
Add a good football player. You had a good football player.
Yes, maybe you bring in somebody else. There's no question in my mind that they would have been one of the top teams in the AFC that year. I mean, Brock in that system would have been dynamite. I mean, with Gary Kubiak, his relationship there, the mobility that Brock had, the athleticism he brought. And I just think that if he stays, who knows what these last 5 years have been like for the Broncos. I mean, I think you're talking about a completely different history here. I'm not saying that he would have come in and lit up the world, but what I'm saying is that team was good enough around him that we even saw with Peyton Manning wasn't playing like Peyton Manning, and they still won the Super Bowl. So like if you just got somebody who was at that point pretty well versed in the system, pretty well versed in what the NFL was all about, that would have been his 5th year. And he would have just stepped right in. And I just feel like, no knock against Trevor Siemian. And like you mentioned, he got hurt there, but that team would have been really good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if they beat New England on the road to go to the Super Bowl? Probably not. I mean,
no,
that's a tough ask. And there were some other good teams. Kansas City was starting to be pretty good. Obviously, Alex Smith was still the quarterback at that point. Some other competitive teams as well. And so I'm not sure if they go all the way, but yeah, that defense was still really good that year. It does make you wonder though, Phil, like when he did come back, which was just really a year later, it didn't work at all. And, in part, maybe you could say the system was different. Bill Musgrave was the offensive coordinator at that point. I guess Mike McCoy and then Bill Musgrave took over. But that really just didn't work. And so, yeah, maybe Gary Kubiak's system very specifically helped Brock in a way that, he couldn't, maybe another system didn't work quite as well. And I'm not sure that Brock was ever going to be the guy that was going to carry a bad team with him on his shoulders, but certainly he could have been that complementary piece.
Yes. I don't think he was going to come in and light up the world, but I do think I don't know what happened with him in Houston. It clearly did not work there. And maybe his confidence was shaken after that. Maybe just something happened where you feel like he just wasn't the same after that. And, sometimes you get comfortable in a place. Sometimes you get used to your surroundings. And when that changes, it doesn't work out. And, he talked about his time coming back. And while that team wasn't, didn't have a lot of success, he does enjoy it in Denver. And I just thought that was a really good conversation. He was very open and candid and talked about things that, probably weren't the easiest to talk about. And especially for a guy who, wished that he was maybe in the league the last couple of years. So I do appreciate him taking some time to chat there. And, there's so much talk in Denver about the quarterback carousel that's taken place and everything that's gone on, these last couple of years, even leading with Mark Sanchez, who was supposed to come in when stuff didn't work with Brock, and there's been a lot of guys who've come in and it hasn't quite clicked just yet. Maybe Drew's that guy, but you just can't help but wonder what would have happened if Brock would have come back.
Yeah. And I think one other thing to note about why maybe they don't repeat is just, that team, I think in some ways, Phil, was tired. You know, they had been to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years. They'd been to the playoffs every year for 5 years. They had gone deep in the postseason. You know, it's kind of not the same extent as New England, but New England going to the Super Bowl every other year and going to the AFC Championship. Exactly. It's exhausting. And I think you could see by the time the Broncos got to Kansas City on Christmas night, when they had to win to stay in the playoff hunt,
they didn't have it.
They were just done.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, even Gary Kubiak, he retired for health reasons, but it was clear that he was just exhausted as well. And so I do think, you know, dynasties don't last forever. Those 4 years of Peyton Manning, that team was really remarkably good. And it did have to end at some point. And could you have maybe pushed it one more year? Perhaps. I don't think it would have been. I don't think the Broncos were making it to the AFC Championship necessarily, unless there was some sort of crazy scenario. But yeah, I think things were just kind of naturally on their way out, and hopefully that happens at Kansas City soon.
When you win, I will say it energizes you, you know, and like that season was that overtime loss against Kansas City at home. That really felt like a turning point there. Maybe if the Broncos win that with, say, a Brock Osweiler, who knows how things end up going that season, and maybe you're energized, you know. Of course, the era of Manning had to end, but that doesn't mean that the team couldn't have still been successful, you know, in my opinion. So,
right. But, you know, there's very few teams that have gone back to back, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah. People come a knocking for some of your talent. That's what usually happens.
Hopefully the Chiefs fall victim to somebody here.
Well, Eric, do you think we should get to fill in the blank here?
Yeah, we should. We just got a couple for you today, Phil.
Okay.
The first one, Andy Reid today, Phil, said that he just sees Drew Lock getting better and better, and every game he plays, he's just going to improve. A lot of people on Twitter, when I tweeted that out, said Andy Reid's just being smart. He just wants Drew Lock to play in the AFC West for a long time. When you hear Andy Reid say that, you think blank.
I don't know if I have one word for you here, Eric, but I will say
you can do like a phrase.
Couple of things. One, I think that Andy Reid has a unique relationship to Drew Lock. Knows his dad, a Kansas City kid who grew up in that community, probably has some sort of a relationship there where he's just paid attention to Drew Lock's career. So he knows him. There's a relationship there. So I think there's definitely that. The other thing I think is that normally on the opposing coach's call, there's a level of respect and deference that they say, hey, they say nice things. You know, you usually hear Vic Fangio always really complimentary of the opponents that he's playing. But I also think there's probably some truth to that he sees Drew growing, and in certain areas, that's certainly true. I mean, there's, Drew Lock now can walk into a huddle and deliver a play and break the huddle clean and get to the line of scrimmage. Those things are all really smooth, in my opinion. Those are things that he was working on last year. You know, remember with his wristband and the Buzz Lightyear and all that. Now you see Drew really confident, going to the huddle, delivers a call break, gets to the line of scrimmage. He still has all the physical tools. I do think there's some areas that he's improving. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where it's sort of like a leaky boat where you plug one hole and another thing pops up. I do think Andy's probably telling some truth there, where he does see some things that maybe a normal fan doesn't see it. He does see some of that growth. But overall, I think you're just, in general, very respectful on those calls.
You don't think there's a hidden motive here that he wants?
No.
The way that you would be like, gosh, CSU, keep employing these head coaches that you've been hiring the last few years.
I don't think that that's the case. No, I definitely don't.
Got it.
What do you think?
I think that's probably a little bit too conspiracy heavy for me.
Even for me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love conspiracies.
Phil, this one may be a little tricky. I'm not sure.
Hit me.
Justin Simmons, I think, is probably, in most people's minds, the most deserving player on the Broncos roster to make a Pro Bowl this year. Give me an outside the box name, somebody that you think deserves Pro Bowl recognition or consideration, even, that probably won't get it. So not a Simmons, not a Garrett Bowles, but if you had one guy to pick, you would pick blank.
Well, I think when I look at this roster, there's three guys who are probably deserving to be in the conversation. I think that Justin definitely should get the nod this year. I think Garrett Bowles has probably done enough to get a nod. The third guy that just comes to my mind is Bryce Callahan. I don't know if that's an outside the box thought because of how well he's played, but if you think about what Bryce has been asked to do, he's been asked to play inside at nickel. He's been asked to play outside, and the guy's just delivered no matter where he's played this season. And I don't think that Bryce Callahan's given up a touchdown this season. When he's directly guarding that player, I don't think anybody's caught a touchdown on him. He had that big interception against Mike Williams in that Chargers game. He's come in and caught punts. I know that he's got this injury he's dealing with now, but up until this point, he had been at least in the Pro Bowl conversation in my mind.
Yeah, it's tough to know with, is his season over? We don't know that for sure. I think the earliest he could come back is week 16. At that point, you kind of wonder, is it worth it? Or do you just shut him down for the rest of the year? Phil, I think Shelby Harris, had he continued to play, obviously he's missed a lot of time here now because of the COVID list. He was a guy that I think was, no one around the league probably knows his name if you're a casual fan. But he was playing sneaky good football, I think. He was a kind of an energetic force on that defense. Obviously bats down a lot of passes. I think Shelby's a guy that he could play that well for the rest of his career and might not ever get a Pro Bowl nod, but he's the type of guy that you want around. Mike Purcell, Phil, is another guy that, had he stayed healthy, again, probably not going to get the accolades, but you can see what's happened to the Broncos run defense without Mike Purcell. And so I think that to me shows how valuable he was.
Yeah. No, I mean, those guys up front have been tremendous this season. Hopefully Shelby, we saw him back out at practice on Wednesday. Hopefully he's able to get healthy and finish up the season strong here, because I know he's going into another contract off season. So yeah, I think if he would have been continued to play at that level, he would have been in the conversation. In my mind, Bryce Callahan's that guy though, but Shelby more outside the box, I would say.
Yeah. And I do feel bad for a guy like Noah Fant, who maybe if there was a little bit more quarterback consistency, if there was, if they just target him a little bit more as you would like to see, he's been borderline dominant at times. And there are areas where he ranks very high among tight ends. I think he's like 4th or 5th in receiving yards, or was going in before the Saints game. So he still had a nice season. I know he's kind of fallen off people's radars, and maybe people aren't appreciating that he still had a decent season here, but I think he could have been really good. And the circumstances, I think more than anything, have led to that not happening.
And some of that's on him though, himself, Noah. He's got to be able to, if he really feels like he's open and dominating and not getting the ball, then that's on him to communicate that and say, hey, I need to be targeted more. I need to be involved here more in an appropriate way. Do you know what I'm saying? He doesn't need to complain or like blast anybody in the media or anything like that. But I think you could go to Drew, or you could go to Pat and just say, hey, I'd love to be featured more in the passing game here. So, and I'm sure that Drew would have hit him a lot if he had done something like that, or if he'd really been wide open. But yes, of course, some of these players, like you saw George Kittle last year, really benefit from the play that Garoppolo brought there in San Francisco. That's not quite the same this season. He's not quite the same this season. So
I will say Noah Fant had a team high 2 targets against the Saints.
And I do believe he led the team in receptions.
And receiving yards. Yeah. And yards per catch.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Almost every single receiving category.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, miles ahead of everybody else, really.
Miles, the mascot?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. All right, Eric, should we get to that point in the show, I think, where we do a little thing called shout-outs?
Are we there already, Phil?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you think of anybody?
Shout out Liz Manis.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
My cause, my cleats. My cleats, my cause.
Uh-huh.
It's a what would you, for people that don't know, Phil, fifth year that players are able to design their cleats for a cause that's important to them.
Cleats cause.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
All sorts of cool causes out there. What would you pick, Phil?
I don't know. I think you see a lot of the players pick something that's like very personal to them. So I'd probably pick something, my mom passed away from ovarian cancer. So I think probably something like that. Something personal, I think.
Yeah.
How about you?
My sister benefited from the Make-A-Wish Foundation when she was younger. So I think that's a good cause I would support there. And I will say the Broncos do open up this
to the staff
event campaign. Yeah, to the staff. They're able to recognize their causes as well. So it's a nice deal.
I have not taken advantage of that, Eric. I probably should have.
No, there's a form you have to fill out. And when you see that, you're you head the other direction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Too much paperwork.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, Eric, I like the Mike, my cleats, my cause. Yeah, yes. I do like that. I do wish that they were able to do it more than just at the end of the season here. Would have been. It cool.
Used to be 3. There was 1 year where they could do it for 3 games, I think.
Yeah, would be cool if just every game,
all the time.
Yeah, they could just wear whatever they wanted, but
different cause each time.
Yeah, different cause, same cause, whatever they. I mean, remember a couple of years ago when Vaughn was wearing those crazy shoes for every pregame warmup
for a non-Nike brand, I believe.
I can neither confirm nor deny. I don't even want to talk about that.
Yeah,
but I will say that was very cool.
Yeah, those pregame cleats that guys wear, very impressive. And some people don't know, Phil, you do that with your dress shoes.
Yeah.
Not now, given the circumstances, but normally when we're out on the road, you've got chicken feathers on one of them. You've got some jingle bells.
Yes.
You've got a little pumpkin painted on. Then you switch into your real ones because you can't be doing a pregame hit, for example, in silly shoes.
That's true. That is. And I also do the same thing with my tie.
Right.
Yeah. My tie, my ties.
Almost. Yeah. I think you're close. I think you're close to something there.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and I think Ben Swanson picked the Denver Botanic Gardens.
Yes. Yeah.
They do sure they
holiday lights this time of year, Eric. Very nice.
Yes. He hung some lights. Of those actually.
Yeah.
He helped out.
And also COVID safe too.
Yeah, just because you're outside.
You can distance.
Yeah. Do you are there fewer people allowed this year than normal?
I'm not sure. I have not attended myself yet.
Got it.
Yet.
You wouldn't.
Yet.
I'm more of a zoo lights guy myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shout out to the Denver Zoo.
Yes. Also a good cause.
I don't think you'll find a horticulturist like Swanson at Zoo Lights.
Certainly can't say that word. Yeah, I like the lights to be moving, because they put the animals on the plants and on the zebras, the rhinos.
The animals on the plants?
The light on the plants.
The animal lights.
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah.
Maybe you get a nice beverage at Zoo Lights. You walk around a little bit.
Hot cocoa. That's your favorite.
Perhaps.
You love
the press box, but still good.
All right. Hopefully that was entertaining, but maybe also a sign that we should wrap this bad boy up. Put a bow on it. Put a bow on
friends, as we enter December, Phil, it's the season of giving. I think our friends Brandon from Iowa, Jeff Flanagan.
Yes. Dave in Pittsburgh. Harry in San Diego.
Yeah, Dave from Pittsburgh is rapidly climbing the Neutral Zone Nation rankings.
Yes.
That's a funny guy.
Yes.
Just trying to get on his good side for his next voicemail.
Don't try too hard, Eric.
You think it's working?
It's a lost cause for you. Yeah. You want to just be covering the Steelers. You'd be covering a game right now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. The old hometown Steelers.
Oh, we also don't want to forget our friend in Cape Town. We're worldwide.
That's right.
So
Honko.
Honko, yeah.
Yeah.
So
sounds like you kind of forgot him.
I said Cape Town.
You didn't say his name.
Oh, Honko.
Yeah.
I would never forget.
Yeah. Phil, I will say I'm curious here, not to blast you in front of everybody. There was a report on NFL Network that there were people in the building who didn't even know who Kendall Hinton was.
That was
I presume that was you.
Erroneous.
Presume that was you.
Drew Lock was asked if he knew who Kendall was, and he laughed that off and said, "Of course I did."
Well, of course Drew knows who Kendall is.
Yeah.
I saw that report and I thought, man, they must have talked to Phil.
You didn't think I knew who Kendall Hinton was? Are you crazy?
It must be crazy. You're an active roster guy. There's nothing wrong with that. Your motto: 53 or dead to me.
That's not true. I was like one of the first. Everybody was like, "Oh, Royce Freeman's going to start," and I was like, "What about Kendall Hinton?" That was me.
That's true. Yeah.
That was me. And when he ran out onto the field, I got some cell phone video. I was like, "That's my guy, Kendall Hinton."
Yeah.
Right. Other people were like, "Oh, is that Kendall? Who is that? Who's that guy?" Because he didn't have his jersey on just yet. And I was like, "That's Kendall Hinton."
So I could tell from the press box. It's hard to tell what people's faces look like from very far away and a mask on. Once he sprinted really fast and then also started throwing the football, I pieced together that was Kendall Hinton.
You used context clues.
Yes.
Put that all together. Wow.
Also one of them was that he was very small. That was another context clue that helped.
Yeah, short. Yeah. Not a typical Broncos quarterback at 5'11". Yeah. See, I fit the billing more of what, like me and Drew, me and Brock.
There were reports that they asked to have Calabrese out there.
Yeah.
They actually started with you, but they said that's definitely not allowed. The NFL didn't want teams to start hiding players on their digital media staffs.
Yeah.
Because, they were already like, you've got Phil and Eric. That's really not fair for a competitive reason.
Well, when I think of our staff, I'm sort of like Eric, Phil, Steve Atwater, the list just goes on and on. So
Steve's low. Yeah. Steve's third for sure.
Yeah. So that's where we store our guys.
And, Phil, we do like Kendall's in general. Of course, Kendall Coyne, wife of former Broncos lineman Michael Schofield. She's an Olympic gold medalist. I think she just got a job with the Blackhawks as like a player development coach.
She participated in the NHL All-Star game last year. Not in the game, but in the festivities that weekend.
She's dope.
She is. You and I each held her silver medal at the time.
We did. Yeah, that was
pre-gold medal. Yeah.
She wouldn't talk to us after the gold medal.
Too big.
Yeah.
She
skated backwards faster than Michael Schofield could skate forward.
Yeah, that was embarrassing. The last thing I'll say about storing guys on the digital media staff, salaries also very similar. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're a major cap hit.
I know. Hey, if this podcast keeps getting any bigger,
the hair don't pay for itself.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. This lighting from the sun. That's free.
This painting of New York City. How do you think I got that?
Yeah. That's interesting, Eric. Can you explain that a little bit more? Why is the sky purple in New York?
It just weird radioactive material, I think. That's the Batman logo. You can kind of see it. This is right after Bane gets captured.
Got it. Right there in Manhattan.
This is Chicago. We just had a YouTube commenter once who was a little confused.
That's because you're a cats guy, right?
A cats person, but not a cat person.
Cats.
What
noise does a cat make? Got it.
Kind of that sort of noise.
That was nice. Yeah, and I'm recording, so that's perfect. So that'll be good. Thank you very much.
Delete this 10-minute section, aren't you?
Shout out to Eric for making the noise.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. So we chatted a little bit about this Chiefs game. And when I say a little bit, I really mean a little bit about the Chiefs game. Talked about what the next 5 games could mean for the Broncos. Then we got into my conversation with Brock Osweiler, which was tremendous. I highly encourage, if for some reason you skipped straight ahead to the shout outs, go back and listen to the Osweiler interview. I think you'll enjoy that. Talked a little bit about my cleats, my cause. My
cause, my cleats, I think.
Got it. So we did the shout outs, and I think that's going to do it for us. We'll be back, of course, after the game next Monday, even though it'll be a late game. And Eric needs, what do you need these days? Like 14 hours of sleep usually?
Yeah, I get really grumpy otherwise.
Yeah. So right when you wake up after the game, we can record, and hopefully we'll get some voicemails and emails there. So that is going to do it for this episode. For Eric Dalala, I am Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutral Zone.
This is Bronco Batman, and you're listening to The Neutral Zone.